is a belt to open wide.
Welcome to another Pandora's Box, ladies and gentlemen. We've got another special guest on the show today, Jayney Goddard. Welcome to the show, Jayney.
Hello, hi everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's really, really lovely, Calum. Thank you.
For people that listen to Pandora's Box on AW Radio, Jayney's been on the show on AW Radio several times already. Yeah. This is the first time on Pandora's Box. I've already got to know you a little bit, and obviously met you once in person at the Christmas meal. So it was great to meet you.
It's great.
I sort of sat in on one of my old man's shows just before Christmas, and I thought it was really interesting hearing about your story and some of your opinions on things. So this show is obviously a lot more like fleshed out in terms of like the conversation, getting in sort of like deep conversations, not so many like breaks with the music and everything. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have you on, and we can just really get into a deep conversation. And just like let all of the people that listen to Pandora's Box get to know you.
Thanks. That's really lovely, Calum. Thank you.
No, that's all right. So, what would you say are the main things you're known for, Jayney? I know that you're obviously very deep into complementary medicine.
That's right. Yes.
And also very quirkily used to be in the circus.
Yes, yes.
What else do you sort of like do like day to day? Just so people, before we sort of get it more deeply into your story and your background and everything, just so people can sort of like sum up what you do day to day.
Yeah, sure.
What are you up
yes, I mostly cuddle my rescue dog and cat a lot. Nice. In all honesty, I spend most of my time, so the day job basically is running the Complementary Medical Association. It's a fantastic, incredible organisation. I founded it 32 years ago in February, and it has absolutely transformed the face of complementary medicine and holistic healthcare, integrated medicine, that sort of thing. And my aim was always to position these different approaches alongside conventional medicine. And now, back in the early 90s rather, that was almost unimaginable that would ever happen, and now it is something that doctors are completely willing to accept and totally understand. They haven't got all the answers, they've got brilliant answers, they haven't got all the answers. Same on our side of the fence, we certainly don't have all the answers, but we have brilliant answers for things like lifestyle mediated illnesses. So complementary medicine, for anybody who doesn't know, is anything ranging from nutrition to herbal medicine to acupuncture to osteopathy, chiropractic, so basically anything that isn't conventional medicine.
Yeah, so conventional obviously being more like, what you would go to the hospital for, essentially.
That's right, yeah.
Go to your doctor for.
That's right, exactly, yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? I do think it's become like a lot more mainstream sort of in the last 20 years, and I think that rather than there maybe being almost like a battle between the two, it's much more like integrated into this one thing, which I think it should be. Yes. And I like the term in itself, complementary medicine, because obviously what it implies is that you shouldn't ignore the if you want to call it traditional medical side of things. If you do have an infection, obviously you should go and get antibiotics and stuff like that, because before we had antibiotics, people died of infections all the time.
Exactly.
I remember reading that one of the main reasons that although obviously it's a horrible statistic to look at on paper, sometimes people get overly concerned with the fact that one of the main causes of death nowadays for people is by cancer, and if you look say like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that wasn't the case. And
that's
obviously
right.
what somebody might initially think is, oh my god, that means that loads more people are having cancer today than they did 200 years ago. That's not actually often the case. The fact of the matter is that people just died of horrible infections and stuff before they would have even got cancer and died of cancer.
Yes, you are right, absolutely. However, there has been a change, and your point is absolutely valid, Calum. However, there has been a change, and what we do now know is that the majority of cancers that people experience nowadays are actually, majority of them are driven by lifestyle factors, such as poor diet, lack of exercise, smoking and drinking alcohol, and so on and so forth. So there has been a bit of a sea change, and people did get cancer sort of way back, but as you rightly say, you were far more likely to die from stepping on a rusty nail than you were to sort of go on, and also of course the stats are skewed because a lot of the time those statistics will be based on on times when we had really high levels of infant mortality and maternal mortality, of course, in childbirth.
Yeah,
so, a lot of that has changed. So thank goodness we have modern medicine, absolutely. But what's interesting is that the modern medicine doctors now realise that the big challenges to health and well-being, still the biggest killer is heart disease. Well, we know that is mediated by lifestyle. And of course, lifestyle-mediated cancers. Of course, there are many cancers that people get that have nothing to do with lifestyle, childhood cancers and so on and so forth. So, there's always going to be that sort of side of things. But also the cost, though, to us as society for dealing with things like type 2 diabetes, which is, again, very much lifestyle-mediated and also remediated by changing lifestyle. So, unless we deal with these and we deal with them swiftly as a society and really provide people with the tools they need in order to make the changes that are sustainable to be able to reverse things like type 2 diabetes and other devastating chronic illnesses, the chronic diseases, most of which can be halted and even reversed, it's going to be a very difficult situation for society because, the NHS will be bankrupted. And we're spending trillions of pounds, and the US is spending trillions of dollars on these illnesses. So we do, if we're not going to go bankrupt as a society, we've got to make sure that we have strategies and we support people in making the necessary changes.
100%. I think it seems to me, at least, that there's become, in the last sort of century, an over-reliance on traditional medicine, on the idea that, it's okay, because if I get whatever, I can go to, I can get prescribed whatever, and that'll sort my condition. Whereas obviously that should be, prevention always beats cure. So what you should obviously be aiming for is to be a healthy person by default. That's work out, keep your weight down, preferably not smoke, or at least don't smoke very much. Same with alcohol, and then that will prevent obviously cancers, heart disease, diabetes, things like that. It's interesting with you saying about you could become diabetic and essentially cure yourself of it from lifestyle changes. And sort of my father-in-law has sort of done that himself in the last couple of years. He was a type 2 diabetic, and he's sort of like coming out of it now, just from essentially he had a real bad sweet tooth. We'd always eat sort of chocolate bars on the way to work, drink lots of Coca-Cola and stuff like that. Basically cut that out, started sort of like more like boiling eggs and taking them to work with him, and trying to be a good boy and eat a couple more greens and stuff. And he is actually coming out of it now, which just goes to show you can change it. But I think I've read studies myself just in the last couple of months that, for example, take alcohol, that are showing that we've always known that alcohol isn't good for you. But if anything, the more that time is going on, there's actually more information showing that alcohol is actually worse for you even than we originally thought, and especially with how carcinogenic it is.
Yeah, exactly. There's no safe level of alcohol consumption, and that is really scary. So the received wisdom of how men can have this many units and women can have this many units actually needs to be revisited by Health UK and NHS England and all of the other organisations out there that sort of oversee and advise the public, what actually is safe for them. So it's a real shame. It is a real shame because people are sort of they feel as though all their fun is being taken away from me. If I can't drink and I can't smoke and I've got to exercise and I can't eat this and I can't eat that, it does look a bit sort of deprived. But instead of coming, I always say with my clients, instead of coming from a mindset of deprivation, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, actually flip the script and look at what you can do. And one of the ways that I actually work with people is I teach mindfulness, because what we know from the research in the mindfulness and the meditation and the mindfulness-based stress reduction sectors, there's a huge, really robust database here. And that is that if we can get people being mindful, if we can get people out connecting to nature, taking a walk just outside and and connecting, walking in a forest, that sort of thing. What we know is that they are then far more able to make healthy lifestyle choices overall. It's a really strange thing. There was a fantastic study done on soldiers. Some were educated. One section of the cohort was educated on healthy diet. The other cohort was given mindfulness-based stress reduction training and a sheet about healthy diet, and the other cohort was just given mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's very interesting because obviously there was no weight change in the group that was given the info sheet on a healthy diet. There was a small change on the group that did the MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and the healthy diet sheet, but they were then asked to stop doing the meditation. But the group who was just given the meditation intervention, but no information about diet whatsoever, but they were asked to continue, and being good soldiers, they continued. They did what they were told, and they actually lost weight, and they kept the weight off. So the group who did the MBSR intervention with the diet sheet, they lost weight initially. It then came back on. So what we know is that MBSR, mindfulness, works as long as you continue to do it. So it's not a quick fix and then whoopee-doo, you're done. It's not an injection, a Wegovy or anything like any of the popular weight loss injections that South Park did a most fantastic episode on. So these things actually work, and there are ways of doing these things that actually make life more joyful and just enjoyable overall, really, and achieve what we're trying to do with people to get them healthier and happier.
Sure. When you say that the meditation, what sort of meditation was it that these people were doing?
Okay, very, very simple and straightforward. So MBSR is based on a lot of the meditation techniques that Dr. Herbert Benson started to pioneer. I was lucky enough to be trained by Dr. Benson himself at the Benson Henry Institute at Harvard Medical School. So straight from the horse's mouth. He was my pretend granddad. I didn't have any granddads because they were lost in the war. So he was my surrogate granddad. A beautiful elderly man, gorgeous, incredible soul. And he looked at the research and realized that that transcendental meditation practitioners were getting these incredible health and well-being results. So being a good scientist, he realized that what he had to do was unpack TM, take the religious element out of it, and just look at, sort of boil things down essentially to find out what the active ingredient is, so to speak. So Dr. Benson actually came up with something called the relaxation response. And the relaxation response is a type of meditation where you sit for 20 minutes, you get yourself nice and comfortable, and then you'll gently close your eyes and just identify any areas of stress in your body that you may be holding on to that you can just gently release. And
when you say your body, sorry, do you mean physically? Like
your physical
stress? Body,
yep, that's right, that you've got sort of areas of tension. You're like me, where you're sort of typing all day with your shoulders around your ears because you're just like panicking to get your work done. And so then you start doing the meditation itself, which is where you breathe in counting 1, and then you breathe out counting 2. You breathe in, count 3, breathe out, count 4. You go up to 10, and then you start again. Or you can do, for example, breathing in, thinking of the word love, breathe out thinking of the word joy, or whatever it is that works for you. The point is, though, that if you pick something, you need to stick to it for the whole 20 minutes. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Exactly. But as long as you stick to it, it doesn't matter. What this is doing, this mantra meditation, is essentially starting to drown out the monkey mind. It's starting to calm everything down.
True need
so,
that.
I'm doing it right now. It's amazing.
There we go, guys.
He's the monkey man.
Absolutely. And so in meditation we talk about monkey mind. So I studied with Herbert Benson, and then I went on to become a Zen meditation teacher. And we talk about monkey mind. Monkey mind is where you close your eyes, you're thinking, I'm going to start meditating, you're sitting down, and then you're going through your shopping list, and then you're going through, did I turn the gas off? All of those things, all those intrusive thoughts. And so Dr. Benson always taught us that, when an intrusive thought comes in, as it will do, and this is absolutely completely acceptable, you're not aiming for a blank mind with no thoughts. That's a lot of people think that's what you're supposed to do in meditation. It's not that at all. It's actually developing the ability to have focus and to maintain concentration. That's it, being exactly perfect. And so when you recognize that, I'm away with the fairies here, I'm thinking about something and I've lost track of where I was, you just go, and this is what Dr. Benson he'd say, oh well, and you just go back to your mantra.
I like it.
It's so easy. On my website, actually, I've got a free download for people. So it's a full instructional download to stop you. It's there is Dr. Benson's book, and there are free instructions out there online. But the problem is when you're trying to learn how to do this, and you've got to read the next step of the instruction, then close your eyes again, and then read the next step. It all gets a bit annoying and confusing and a bit overly hard. So I've got a really nice meditation that I talk people through and teach them how to do it.
And this is the same meditation that people were doing in that study that made them successfully keep to their diet.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. It's an extraordinary thing, because this type of meditation, it has also been shown to regulate blood sugar, regulate blood pressure, regulate hormones. It's fantastic for women to use in menopause when their hormones are going absolutely wonky. It is so powerful. This is the most powerful medicine that I've ever come across, in all honesty.
Do you associate the benefits of this purely for lowering cortisol levels in the body, which we know is obviously hugely massively bad for your health? I mean, I've even read studies myself saying that stress, which obviously causes cortisol to spike in your body, could potentially be more damaging for you than smoking. So if you had a very happy smoker, and somebody that was, on paper had a healthy lifestyle, but they were exceedingly stressed, they could be more unhealthy than the smoker. Which I remember when I read that initially, it seems crazy, doesn't it? Because I think as human beings, we think so much about the external things that you can put on in your body, physically, drink bad food, smoking. Whereas it just goes to show how vital it is to try and not be stressed as a human being. That could literally kill you.
Calum, you are absolutely spot on. It's a very, very interesting thing. Cortisol is also correlated with high cortisol also correlates with high levels of depression, severe depression as well. So it's a very interesting thing. I have the autoimmune condition rheumatoid arthritis, and what we know about people with RA, because our cortisol levels are absolutely off the charts unless you get into a long remission, which I'm in, thank goodness, which I manage with lifestyle approaches, and I talk about in Rewind Your Body Clock. So we do know that people with RA and other autoimmune diseases, they have exceptionally high cortisol. They are at much, much, much higher risk of heart attack and stroke than the regular members of the population who don't have this autoimmune disease. But they're also much higher risk of very severe depression, inflammation, cortisol and depression. It's like this little circle. And it used to be thought in medicine, you're in chronic, horrific pain day in, day out. Of course, you're bound to feel depressed. But the researchers started to unpick all of that and realised that even in the patients who don't have necessarily particularly high pain levels, they still have really high depression levels.
Right, so it's caused as a result of the cortisol, not as a result of the feeling bad because of
That's right, exactly. Right. Yeah. So
it's
you're
more
right,
like a chemical imbalance.
Yes, it is. It really, really is. And there are thoughts that actually that cortisol affects brain structure and fun. Well, we know that actually cortisol shrinks the hippocampus in the brain.
Wow.
So it means that you're less less likely to be able to retain information. You're more prone to depression. You become very forgetful. Brain fog is another thing. So
that's one thing that I notice, forgetfulness. If I'm feeling stressed and stuff, I start forgetting things.
Yes.
Like stupid things, like you'll forget your car keys or, or something like that, Nothing major, just little stupid things like that. And it's like...
That's exactly.
Calm down.
Yes. No, it gets very, very difficult. And the problem is when you're dealing with brain fog and then you're trying to work, it then gets horribly stressful because you can't think straight and you can't process information. So it's a horrible
spirals out of control, and then it becomes what came first, chicken or the egg sort of situation.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Do we know, with you saying with rheumatoid arthritis that people that suffer from that condition have the high cortisol? Do we know why that is?
Yeah, we do. So essentially, what's happening when you have rheumatoid arthritis and other autoimmune conditions. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition, obviously very different. We were just talking about type 2, but type 1 is very different. And so that has all the same issues going on, multiple sclerosis and, lupus, for example. There are so many autoimmune conditions, hundreds of them actually. And they all have they have a common denominator underlying all of them, which is higher levels of inflammation, which is driven by cortisol production and so on. So yes, anybody suffering from an autoimmune condition will have the high cortisol, which is just so destructive mentally, emotionally and physically.
Like a friend of mine. I can't remember what type of autoimmune condition it is because it's an exceedingly rare one. I was talking to her about it a while back, but it's sort of like ruined her life essentially. I don't want to say that sounds like exceedingly bleak. I'm sure she's doing the best in the situation she can, but she used to like work out in the gym all the time, be like a really impressive like physical specimen. Now she's like pretty much housebound, like can't leave the house. Needs help like walking, and she's still. I think she might either be in her late 20s or just turned 30, sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? So she's exceedingly young, and I think and she's such a nice human being as well. And it really, I really feel for her, in that regard. And I've been trying to actually get her to come on the pod to talk about what it's been like for her to sort of like deal with that, but she sort of agreed and she didn't feel quite comfortable. I think but I think it's because she struggles with it so much she doesn't maybe feel comfortable talking about it yet. But I do feel like massively. I can't imagine what it would be like to go through that myself.
Yes, it's very strange you should say. So actually, there are plenty of men who do have autoimmune conditions, but by far the majority are women, and the typical age at diagnosis is late 20s, early 30s. Wow. And these things are absolutely devastating. Gabor Mate, I don't know if you've come across him and his work.
I have. I haven't myself, but
incredible. Well worth, I'd say to anybody listening in, viewers, do check Dr. Gabor Mate's work out. Mate is the spelling of his surname. Extraordinary man, psychologist and various, all sorts of different things that he does. But he does actually talk about the fact, his rationale for why women are particularly at risk for autoimmunity is that women tend to be unable to say no. They tend to be a lot is demanded of women. So there are quite a lot of rationales that he talks about. There's also very much a connection with adverse childhood events, which is a big thing in psychology at the moment. So they have a score sheet, and the number of adverse childhood events you have predisposes you to have a much, much higher risk of incidence of chronic illness in midlife. So women tend to have quite a lot of higher levels of adverse childhood events, a lot sort of centred around assault and things like that, without going into details too much. So that's one of there are connections that are starting to be made in medicine about all of this. But on a really positive note, there is so much that can be done. Now, the problem is conventional medicine doesn't really recognise this, or is only just starting to make inroads. You've got to understand that most doctors, if they are lucky, get about 3 hours of training in nutrition during their entire training, 7 years of training plus.
Which seems crazy, doesn't it? Considering how vital it is to your health.
I know. I was speaking at Parliament actually, and I was talking about nutrition and so on. And I actually had a very respected professor of biochemistry stand up and say, "Young lady, there's absolutely no evidence that nutrition has anything to do with health and well-being." I was absolutely shocked, and but that is, they really do a lot of the, especially the old guard, still have that opinion, which is absolutely horrifically shocking, because everybody knows it has. Does this man not know what vitamins are and minerals and so on? Anyway, long story short, there is so much that we can do. So I'm an example of that. I mentioned last time I think I was on that I was in hospice care when I was at my very, very poorliest. Not expected to live past a couple of weeks, and I'm now in absolutely full-time 100% remission. I'm running all over the world, lecturing hither and thither all over the place, and teaching and this, that and the other, and I was just essentially assigned to the scrap heap on the assumption that there was no way that a person can bounce back from this. I was 10 years a full-time wheelchair user for 10 years, dependent upon others for literally everything. So, and I was told I would never walk again, never stand again. So it just goes to show that there is so much. So there's absolute hope for your friend, and it is by adopting what we call lifestyle medicine approaches, which is a holistic approach. Nutrition, mindset, appropriate exercise, meditation practices, socialization is incredibly important. So it's not the horrific kind of almost pretty much death sentence that it used to be. That's great to hear, obviously, because I think one thing that's so important for us as human beings is to have hope, even in the bleakest of situations. And if there is that hope to cling on to, then I think that is so massively powerful. I'm interested. I know that you're a vegan, Jayney. I'm very interested in sort of like diet and nutrition myself, and I'm very much of the viewpoint that there's not like a one size fits all method, or one approach fits all. I think it depends on the human being and maybe what their personal nutrient deficiencies are. Things like that, what their lifestyle is. I think that sometimes when you hear like, oh yeah, you should just be keto, or you should just be on the caveman diet, you should just be vegan, I think it's more complicated than that, and I think it's more nuanced. So what was your diet like before you made your dietary changes, which then helped you go into remission? And what did your diet look like when it changed compared? And does it still look like that now? Is your diet remain unchanged? Right. Okay. Good question. So prior to making the switch to a fully plant-based diet, I thought I was eating healthily. So back in the early 2000s, let me think this through. Early 2000s. So what I was eating were things like oily fish, salads, a glass of red wine, and perhaps a chicken breast. So I thought I was having healthy fats and good amount of veggies and so on, and a glass of red wine for the resveratrol and so on and so forth. It was making me worse. And the reason is, and we now know this in autoimmunity, so one of the main drivers of autoimmune conditions is poor gut wall health, so gut permeability. Our gut needs to be permeable so that when we take food on board, the nutrients can then get out through the gut into the bloodstream and so on and so forth. However, if you've got what's called leaky gut syndrome, and most people with autoimmune illnesses have this problem, it means that the cell wall of the gut is not it's not as tight as it needs to be. So when you put let's say an animal protein into the body, what actually happens is it gets through the gut wall, escapes into the rest of the body. Your immune system goes, oh my gosh, that molecule there, that animal protein there, shouldn't be here. Alarm, alarm, alarm. Let's set up a massive immune response, which would be the healthy, correct thing for the body to do. It's there to protect you. Anyway, so what happens though in autoimmunity is that too much of this, because of the gut wall problem, is getting out into the body. So the immune system goes on constant chronic red alert. And then what happens is it starts scavenging around the rest of the body, targeting anything else that looks like those animal protein molecules. Connective tissue, for example, or, for example, the myelin sheath, the fatty sheath that covers nerve fibers. So in the case of multiple sclerosis, the myelin sheath is damaged, and hence you get the symptoms of that come up in MS. So essentially, take anybody with an autoimmune condition taking on board animal proteins is putting themselves at exceptionally high risk of not being able of worsening their condition and not being able to cure it. So when you take animal protein out of the equation, the gut walls tighten, and there are ways of achieving this nutritionally. And so the gut is behaving as it should. It calms the immune system down because it hasn't got anything that it needs to fight. It then starts to learn, actually, I don't need to attack all of those connective tissues, nerve fibers, and so on and so forth. It took 3 weeks. I mean, this is just crazy. I went to a place in America, because all my friends nagged me, saying, you've got to go over to this centre, you've got to change your diet to go on a plant-based diet. And I thought, well, bloody hell, I've tried everything. This isn't going to make any difference. That's ridiculous. Where will I get my protein without knowing enough about plant-based nutrition to know there's more than enough protein available to us on a plant-based diet? So I went to this place. I went having been told I would never walk again. My expectation was that hopefully I might find a way of reducing my pain levels. My pain levels were horrific. But 3 weeks later, I was not just out of the wheelchair, but I was walking up and down the beach 3 miles a day, doing back-to-back yoga and Pilates classes, and to all intents and purposes was doing absolutely brilliantly. Now, here's the strange thing, though. You would think, wouldn't you, that I would have learnt my lesson and thought, okay, yeah, this is what I need to do. But of course, being a normal human being, I got back to the UK and I thought, happy days, I'm all cured now, great stuff, I can go back to my lovely mackerel and my lovely salad and my lovely glass of wine, and I was straight back in a wheelchair a couple of weeks later. So I went back to the place, got myself back sorted out again, and realised pretty soon that was what I needed to do, and saw so many other people. I mean, a lot of people go to this particular place because they're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that is inoperable. They'll go there and then suddenly find their cancer's receding. And This isn't woo-woo. This is really fantastically evidence-based stuff. If you read the work by, let me think who... Dr. Dean Ornish and his colleagues on putting people onto a whole food plant-based diet, you can actually switch off the genes that code for cancer and switch on the genes that code for health. You put them back onto, in his case, a standard American diet, and the genes that code for cancer switch back on again, and the genes that code for no cancer switch off. So you can actually manipulate cancer, genetic cancer expression with diet and other lifestyle interventions. So the first study Ornish did was with a group of men who had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. They had opted for watchful waiting because the cancer wasn't particularly aggressive and had not metastasized. So he put them onto a regime whereby they'd moved on to a whole food plant-based diet. They were doing yoga daily. They were in a support group of other men with the same situation. And so they were getting the socialization. Socialization is so important for health. And they were doing a little bit of weight training and so on. And meditation. Sure. And they worked out that, literally after a couple of weeks, just 2 weeks, I mean, this is the insane thing. It's so quick. 2 weeks is all it takes to absolutely radically change your genes. A lot of people think, oh, well, I'm bound to get XYZ condition. My mum had it, my dad had it, my grandma had it, my great-grandma had it, blah, blah, blah. That is not the truth at all. We are not at the mercy of our genetic inheritance.
So even those things that are, obviously, because we know that things are hereditary. We know that we know that you are more likely, say, to have a heart attack if you've got, if your father and your grandfather and great-grandfather had a heart attack. Yeah. But even though that might be the case, there are lifestyle changes you can make to stop that in yourself.
Offset it completely, absolutely, right. Yes. These things are not death sentences, and I think a lot of the issue, it's a very important issue you raise, though, because what we know from people like Professor Ellen Langer, who's, I'm just like her. I'm her sort of ultra girl fan. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. She's at Harvard as well. And Ellen Langer is a social psychologist. And she reckons that 95% of aging and the diseases that we wrongly associate with being a natural part of the aging process are totally avoidable. Right. Aging is 95% mental and probably 5% genetic and inheritance and so on. Okay. And she's done a lot of work to demonstrate that this is actually the case. So I think there is a real problem, and Ellen's work bears this out, that if we expect a certain thing to happen to us, it's far more likely to happen to us. So our expectations really do play into this. If we believe that, we're going to
self-fulfilling prophecy. That's the saying,
exactly. That's the fact. That's the
so it's almost like you're worried about something, and almost the anxiety of something of that happening is worse than actually happening. So sometimes people almost make the thing happen because it's better than actually dealing with the anxiety of worrying it's going to happen. Yeah. Even though that sounds like a mental thing to say, people do it all the time.
You're absolutely right, Calum. Absolutely right, and it's a tragedy, really. And there is so much that we can do to avoid these. What we're seeing in society is, although our lifespan is increasing, our health span is decreasing for lifestyle-related issues, but also because of this expectation where people have seen older generations, really succumbing to these horrible conditions. So they just assume that's their lot in life, and it truly isn't.
Yeah, sure. So I've been building up sort of like several questions as you've been talking. So that's really fascinating, that whole sort of like last 10 minutes. Obviously, you said that you were eating things like like mackerel, chicken breast, and salad beforehand. But then you said you went to this place in America when you changed your diet. So what did your actually diet look like? Day to day, and what does it look like now? And what was it specifically about the animal proteins that was affecting like the gut lining, in the stomach?
Well, a lot of the time, leaky gut syndrome is caused by overuse of antibiotics or inappropriate use of antibiotics. That's another whole massive story, probably a whole show.
Yeah, it's a massive thing in itself. Just medication itself, how bad for you painkillers are, even paracetamol, which are considered like the least strong sort of painkillers, still awful for your internal organs and things like that.
Absolutely awful, 100%. So, if you're starting from a position of leaky gut, that's where the molecules will get through the gut, and then that's when your immune system goes red alert, quick attack that, and then obviously you then get this failure of the immune system to distinguish between self.
Okay, so you'd have to have leaky gut syndrome for the animal protein to affect you badly.
Get through. Is that right? That's right. Yes,
okay,
exactly.
Okay. So I was just a little bit unclear about that.
Yes, sorry. And also, for example, people with celiac disease. So they will have very, very poor junctions in the gut. So again, they are also and arguably celiac disease is an autoimmune condition. So as it are things like ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and so on. So there are many conditions, and more of. And I'll tell you another thing that causes leaky gut. And within 20 minutes after eating a McDonald's burger, your gut wall just goes shh, and will allow all sorts of nasties through. Your gut flora is also very, very important in this entire equation. And so, again, as soon as you eat a hamburger, for example, your gut flora is negatively compromised, which then compromises the production of B vitamins, gut serotonin, and so on.
Do you mean even in like a completely healthy, normal adult?
Yes.
Yeah, so what is it about
Yes.
the hamburger that would make that happen?
Highly processed food.
So just processed food? Processed food.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, you've got to understand that the chemicals in the buns, just the buns alone, are
okay.
horrific. So, this is where people get confused. They think, oh, well, plant-based diet is really super healthy. Well, that's not actually necessarily true.
No, of course.
Because
you could just be eating loads of crisps.
You could. You could exist on Diet Coke and Morrison's donuts. They all happen to be vegan.
Yeah.
Well,
some of the processed vegan meat alternatives, I just think look disgusting, rancid. What even are they? They've got about 50 ingredients in,
they're still healthier for you than actual meat. So we know that red meat and processed meats are class 1 carcinogens. Okay, so we all know that. So what we do know is that these vegan, some of them better than others. So for example, the squeaky bean products are pea protein, and they're actually very, very clean. They've got very few ingredients, and they taste fantastic. And they're a fantastic analog food if somebody's wanting to move away from animal protein. So they're actually great. There's nothing wrong with them, and they're far, far, far healthier than a poor factory farmed chicken that has incredibly high levels of fat. We used to think of chicken as being a lean meat. It's actually not. It's now really fatty meat. So to go back to your question, what did my diet look after I made the switch, and then what does it look like now? So when I went to this centre in America, they get you drinking green juices. So the green juice is things like cucumber and then juiced sunflower sprouts, pea sprouts, and so on. So full of incredible levels of nutrients. The thing about having a green juice is it's a way of getting nutrition into your body incredibly fast without your body having to kind of go through the digestive process, because
so it's just blending up whole greens.
No, it's not blending. So that would be a smoothie. So what you do with juicing is you actually need a juicing machine.
So and squeezing it and compressing it.
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
But what about I've heard a lot of people say, one of the reasons, say for example, that fruit juices are worse for you than fruit is because you're not getting the fibre in it and things like
exactly.
that.
So. And that's absolutely correct. So green juices don't contain fruit. They're just green veggies put through a juicer. Yep.
Yeah.
If you are, I would never
obviously there's
juice.
A lot of fibre in vegetables, isn't there? So
there's a lot of fibre. Yeah.
So surely you wouldn't be getting them in the juice, the same.
No. So as I say, so juicing is different to smoothies. A smoothie is where you take the actual fruit or veg, you whiz it up. You've still got all the fibre, which is incredibly important for us. We need it. The higher the fibre level in your diet, the less predisposed you are to chronic disease. And this is another problem going back to the burgers and so on, is there's very little actual fibre in there. So again, it massively compromises us in so many ways.
Yeah,
when
you're
juicing,
so that's my question though, because obviously when you're saying you're juicing, so you are taking the fibre out of it though, aren't you? So
you
what's
are,
the benefit of that?
So when you are juicing, doing green juices, let's say a juice made of celery, cucumber, you can chuck some kale in there, you could chuck some spinach in, and so on. It's squeezed, so you just get the nutrition out, and you put the fibre, you basically dispose of the fibre. And so you're not taking that on board. So what it means is, because there's no fibre there, the nutrition from the juice goes straight into your bloodstream. There's no waiting around. It's a very, very easy thing for the body to digest. Okay. So green juices are fantastic. I wouldn't recommend fruit juices because, as you rightly said, Calum, what happens is you're removing the fibre, and that means that basically you're getting a massive dose of fructose into the system, which then goes straight through the liver and starts to contribute towards fatty liver disease. So a lot of people say, you shouldn't be eating fruit because of the fructose levels. That's utter rubbish. We need fruit. Fruit is so helpful for us, as long as you've got
so many vitamins,
all of the cofactors. Exactly, you've got a constellation of phytonutrient cofactors that all work together to be incredibly healthy for us. So I would first of all say eat your fruit, or put it into a smoothie, not a juice. So a smoothie is where you chuck it in the blender, whiz it up and chug it down. So you are getting the fibre there, and that slows down the absorption of the fructose, but also gives you all those amazing things, that your blueberries, your strawberries, or your gorgeous berries are giving us. Berries are so profoundly anti-cancer for so many reasons that, I thoroughly recommend them. So my diet now really is very similar to how it was. When I went to this centre, they actually advocate a raw plant-based, whole food plant-based diet. It's difficult to do that in the UK when we're in the middle of winter. So I do take on board cooked food as well. So I'll start off in the morning with perhaps some porridge and topped with blueberries and walnuts. I'll then have lunch will be a massive salad, and then dinner will be, and with my salad I'll chuck a load of beans on for protein, perhaps a little bit of tofu or tempeh, and I actually sometimes will use the squeaky bean chicken sort of pretend chicken thing, because it is a very clean protein, and it's super tasty.
What's that made of?
Pea protein predominantly.
Okay, it's made of pea. That's where the pea comes from.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. So it's actually it's really not a bad thing to have, and super tasty. I've actually had a few non-plant based friends try this, and they're just saying, well, no, it's definitely chicken. It's definitely chicken.
Oh, okay, so it's very
so it's incredibly convincing. Yeah, okay. And then for my evening meal, I'll probably have a perhaps a sweet potato with a load of steamed veggies, and again probably some beans. I'll do something like a chili, or something like I don't know, like a sort of a Mexican meal with refried beans, or perhaps a Cuban dinner with black beans. All of this. There's so many delicious things you can have. And the reason I'm talking about plant-based meals is because I think it's important just for the listeners just to differentiate between plant-based and vegan. So I'm plant-based. I eat a whole food plant-based diet, but I'm also vegan. So people talk about a vegan diet. Veganism is not a diet. It's a compassionate lifestyle where people try as far as
more
possible
ethics.
to, that's it, avoid harm to animals. That's basically it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What would you say about the fact that there's lots of people out there? Two famous examples would be like Jordan Peterson and his daughter Michaela Peterson. Michaela Peterson had an autoimmune disease, and Jordan Peterson has some health issues himself, and they've cured their health problems through the carnivore diet, which is obviously the complete opposite of what you've done. Yes. Obviously, we also know that people in general aren't taking enough protein in their diet. It's often advised that people, old school, as we were talking about doctors before, not knowing enough about nutrition, used to advise only things like 30 grams of protein a day. Now we think, a lower limit should even be like 0.8 grams per pound of protein a day. Some people even advise more than that. If you work out all the time, you should maybe have 1 gram of pound per protein, even maybe more than that. So what would you say to, people that have cured similar autoimmune conditions with a radically different diet? And also with your day-to-day diet, to me, it sounds lacking in protein. What would you say about that as well?
Okay, so let's answer the protein question first and then circle back to Jordan Peterson and so on. Okay, so actually, the protein recommendations have come down again. Anybody eating even a standard Western diet is getting more than adequate protein. So this issue about us not getting enough protein is a little bit confused. What we do need to do is actually go to the data, and what do the data actually tell us? Well, we've got plenty of evidence through people like Dean Ornish, who I spoke about earlier. We've also got people like Neil Bernard, who heads up the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. We've also got people like Joel Kahn, and also people like Dr. Frank Sabatino. These are the researchers who've actually done the work looking at all of this stuff, and even Dr. Michael Clapper. What we know is that our need for protein as humans is not as high as people think. It's actually something closer to 0.35 per grams per kilo.
That seems radically low.
It's radically low. To be on the safe side for a woman, you probably need to be looking at around about 20 grams of protein per meal. So no more than 60 grams a day, because as soon as you start getting higher than that, you start to compromise kidney function. So it's
Isn't that,
very...
I thought that was an outdated
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Can you say this though, Jayney? Because I mean, it's something that I look into a lot. And from I follow lots of doctors myself on social media, listen to lots of podcasts, read lots of things myself from people sharing meta-analyses and that, and they are all, you know, these are PhD people all saying that, you know, it doesn't have an effect on kidney function, and that if anything, the more meta-analyses that are coming out show that, if anything, while I completely agree with you that most people on a Western diet are probably having enough protein, I think that if you're living health consciously, sometimes that then can be harder, because one of the reasons why people are getting in a lot of protein is if they are eating lots of McDonald's and eating lots of fast food, kebabs and things like that, then there's going to be lots of protein in that, but it's very, very bad protein. What I often find, if when people suddenly become health conscious and want to start working out all the time, then I think they need to start making a bit more of an effort then to then be taking in proteins and things like that, and obviously that will make them recover quicker, which will then help them work out harder and more often, and then the benefits of exercise will make them far healthier, which is the ultimate goal.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I think you've got to look at the cohorts, really, that have been examined in these particular studies and meta-analyses. I think really what we've got to understand is that an athlete's requirements are very, very different from a normal bog standard person's requirements. You've also got to look at whether men or women were studied and so on. So I don't think we can actually just say that, we're not getting enough protein, because actually, yes, we are. The kidney damage thing, they're circling back on that, because there was some thought, you're quite right, there was some thought that, actually it might not be as deleterious to kidney health as we thought, but actually we're circling back and thinking, no, actually now it is again. So as always in science...
That's very interesting. It's the first time I've heard anybody say that.
Yeah, as always in science, more work needs to be done, because you're always get conflicting opinions.
Because the one of the things that I've heard is that why they used to think that you would get kidney damage as a result is because when you work out all the time, and obviously often it's people that work out that have high protein diets. One of the side effects of working out all the time and eating a high protein diet is that you might have elevated levels of creatinine in your kidneys, which is very easy to pick up on a blood test.
Yes.
You also will have high levels of creatinine in your kidneys if you have potential kidney failure or damaged kidneys.
Yes.
But the two aren't related. So, for example, if you had high levels of creatinine in your body because you were someone that works out all the time, very, very hard, and has lots of protein, if you just stop doing that, your creatinine levels would go back to normal. It's not because you have bad kidneys. Yeah. It might look like on a blood test you do. Yes. But actually, you're probably far healthier, obviously, than somebody that most people that don't have elevated levels of creatinine at all.
You're absolutely right, Calum. It is a confounding factor, and that has been acknowledged, and it is understood. All I can say is that there are different schools of thought, and it does seem that people are now saying actually, even kind of acknowledging the high creatinine levels because of workout. Also, the fact is a lot of people who are working out are drinking protein, extra protein shakes and things like that. So again, that elevates levels. They may even be taking creatinine supplements as well. Sure. So again, it all adds up to look at all of that there.
Sorry. Just with the creatine, as far as I'm aware, there are no proven negative side effects of creatine, but there are several proven benefits of creatine. For example, there's information that's come out in the last couple of years showing that creatine supplementation can help with the with basically offsetting potential mental health conditions, even like schizophrenia, dementia, and things like that. Yeah. And that you could like healthily take up to 10 grams a day, which most people would never take that. Even like people that weight train all the time will probably only take in about 5 or 6 grams a day. And that there are no proven side effects of it at all.
Right. Okay. I haven't seen that study, so I can't really comment on it.
It's not a study; it's meta-analysis, so a collection.
Sorry. Okay, I haven't seen the meta-analysis. Yes, I can't really comment on that.
No, of course.
It's not something I'm familiar with. I'm
interested in obviously like performance and training, so that's why I would look into the sports element more. Yeah. Obviously, than just the general health for the everyday person. Yes. I completely get that. But one thing I would say about you saying protein levels are different for, say, somebody that's an athlete, different requirements for somebody that's the everyday person. With us both agreeing at the beginning of the show that there is a health basically crisis in the West, and that that prevention beats cure, and that people are focusing too much on the cure and not enough on the prevention. Surely it would be, in an ideal world, everyone in the West would work out all the time, and then just because you're not doing that for a living, like an athlete, you essentially would still be living an athletic lifestyle where you'd be hiking through the forest all the time, as you said, very beneficial for you. Yeah. When you're not hiking through the forest, you'd be lifting weights or doing push-ups or doing pull-ups or going to Pilates class, going for a jog, whatever that might be, and then as a result, because you're putting your body in, say, like a catabolic state, which then is going to require rebuilding, you need to put fuel back into that, get high protein in there to then rebuild your muscles and get you training hard again.
It's surprising how much protein is in any diet, really, actually, to be quite honest with you. So even on a whole food plant-based diet, you are able to get enough proteins. So, and I do agree with you, we do need to move more. I think one of the big reasons why we're suffering as badly as we are, even with things like osteoporosis and so on, which is affecting men now as well as women, is that we sit. And I think this is one of the worst problems. I think if you're quite right. I mean, we should all, should is a great word, isn't it? We should all be out there exercising, lifting weights, and actually natural movement. We should be out there chopping wood and doing all the things.
We all have to do it. We live in a freaking cold country.
That's right.
Back in the day, everyone had to chop wood to stay warm.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, actually. I was listening to something the other day, and it was, I can't, it'll come to me who it was, but it was somebody saying that the more comfortable you make your life, the more fragile and closer to death you get. And this is really, really interesting because it's actually really true, isn't it? When you think about it, back in the day before we had washing machines, can you imagine, can you imagine trying to wash a sheet, a double sheet full of water, scrub, and then having to lift that up onto the line, for it to get it dry.
Rinse it, get it on the line.
That's it.
It's taken so long to do what you would think of as like a washing basket.
It would have taken long, and you think about the weight of these things, just sort of, just kind of making a bed and doing all the things that we used to do. We were so much more active, and we see, particularly in women now, women, and this is another thing, going back to the protein question, and that is that women, certainly after menopause, do need to increase their protein consumption, and they really in quite a concerted way, because we're seeing so much sarcopenia in women where muscle is just essentially disappearing because we're not lifting.
Your muscles atrophy if you don't use them, especially once you get older and your hormones change. It's the same for men. Every man pretty much north of 40, their testosterone levels will decrease. As a result, your muscles will start atrophying. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Have you seen a film called The Game Changers at all?
No.
It's a fascinating.
No, I know that Arnold Schwarzenegger was big in it. To be honest, I wasn't convinced by it personally, Jayney. But I'm always up for having a conversation with anybody, and for hearing different things. Because at the end of the day, I don't have like a dog in the race. I just need to personally be given enough information to maybe convince me of a certain thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, indeed.
But I thought that Game Changers to me came across like it was an agenda to push something. It was to push an agenda rather than actually have being actually that factual itself, personally.
Yeah. So what did you think about the young athletes that they took and moved on to a plant-based diet, and they found that their nighttime erections were far more stronger and frequent, if we're allowed to talk about these things?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, yeah, this is a late night show. To be honest, obviously, Game Changers came out a long time ago. I think to talk about it accurately,
couple of years ago,
I would have to watch it again. Yeah. Sorry, probably about 4 years ago. Would you say sort of 3 or 4 years ago?
Maybe. Yeah, I can't remember.
I would have to watch it again, and probably from people more intelligent than myself, listen to several different reviews from respected sources. Hear different opinions on the data that is shown in the documentary and on how true that is, and get that broken down to then give an accurate opinion myself on what I think of the data that is provided in the documentary.
As a researcher, I found that it was fairly solid, and I thought the film was very interesting, actually, but I did feel that it was really quite solid. So we did see certain things I thought were quite surprising that I wasn't expecting to see. So, yeah, it's just curious. It's a way of looking at things. But going back to your question about Jordan Peterson and his daughter and how they've cured things, anytime you sort of make a radical switch from eating probably not particularly well to eating like a mono diet.
So you're talking like cutting out junk food, chocolate, basically, fast food.
Yes.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But I certainly wouldn't really advocate anybody exist on a class 1 carcinogen, because they will see problems down the road. No ifs, buts and maybes. And they're not getting the phytonutrients that we human beings absolutely need to survive.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm not claiming to be like an absolute expert on any of these things. I do think that it is debatable, from what I know, that all animal proteins are carcinogens. From where, if you can provide me with, evidence to convince me of otherwise, then I am all for it, Jayney. I don't personally, as of right now, believe that.
Right. Okay.
I hope you respect that.
No, I absolutely I completely and utterly respect your position. Absolutely. And we all need to just, you do you. I mean, I think that's a great mantra for life in general. I think it's really important to be compassionate and kind.
Yes.
And for people
and taking different ideas.
Yes, exactly.
Democratically and diplomatically.
Yeah, there's no point in being radical. I think that we're all on a certain path, a certain trajectory, and if you'd said to me a few years ago, you'll be a flag waving vegan eating plants, I'd have said, yeah, nah, that ain't gonna happen. And it's because first of all, I didn't know what I now know, and secondly, I also hadn't looked into things more deeply and didn't know about factory farming and all the rest of it. So obviously that's not a thing we have time to discuss right now. But so I'm surprised at where I am in my life journey. I'm as surprised as the next person. Sure. But it works for me, and it's got me well. I've survived against the odds. So
that's amazing, Jayney. And as I said, just from my point of view, I'm not a fan of radical anything, so I think I try and have like a well-rounded diet, but like a healthy diet, like 90% whole foods. I eat lots of fruit, vegetables, and animal proteins. As far as from everything that I have been able to gather in my life, I think that is what's best personally. I think interesting what you've said. I know this is circumstantial evidence, not direct evidence, but I do think it's interesting, though, that say people like Michaela Peterson, who had an autoimmune disease, and Jordan Peterson, who had some issues himself, has become, by his own blood test results and just how he feels within himself and his daughter feels within themselves. I'm pretty sure at least one of them, I can't remember which one, had cirrhosis as well, that cleared up. I think it's interesting that if the idea that they would be living off purely something which is so carcinogenic, their blood test results could become so much better, and they could reverse really bad, health issues. The idea that you could do that off something which is just almost purely carcinogenic, to me, even though that's circumstantial evidence, seems not quite right.
What
But
we don't know, though, is what did they eliminate from their diets?
No, of
what
course.
were they eating before, and why did
I
they get
completely
sick in
agree
the
with
first
that.
place?
Yeah.
So, yeah, you know, it's.
I completely
think
agree
it's a
with
good
that, and
temporary fix.
But you could use that same logic to people that are on a vegan diet or on a plant-based diet. You could,
Yeah.
people, because there are lots of people that said, I was really unhealthy, and then I went on a plant-based diet and I got way healthier. But you could apply the same logic to that. Well, okay, well, what were you cutting out? Okay, well, before they ate loads of sausage rolls, like from service stations and, McDonald's and Burger King and everything. So it's like, was it the meat that was making them unhealthy, or was it the kind of meat that they were eating, the processed foods you talked about earlier on in the show? Actually, that's the processed foods which are mainly the killers, So these are the reasons why I'm not convinced either way, And as I said, like I'm in the middle, I wouldn't say to somebody I don't think that you should eat vegetables, and I wouldn't say to somebody either I don't think you should eat animal sources. To be honest, I know you have to get on Jayney, so I don't want to keep you for much longer. But I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
I know, absolutely.
And I feel like I could talk to you for about another 2 hours at least. So would you be happy to come back again? And we can talk more. I would love to talk to you just way more without the time constraint. Obviously, I respect your time. I know you have to get on because you've got a meeting. Thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and really respect and appreciate all of your opinions. And I would love to talk to you again, and just help spread awareness for yourself and your story. I know you've got a really interesting background, in the circus and everything. I'd really like to get into that and just hear more about how you got to where you are today, and obviously as well just from a very I think it's really impressive and interesting how you started. Did you say your own business in complementary medicine? What was it, almost 30 years ago?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
And then you're the leader of this complementary medicine association.
That's
I'd love to hear more about that journey, how it started, how you got to where you are today. Really fascinating stuff. So if you'd be happy to come back on again. That'd be fantastic.
Of course, Calum, and thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Jayney. Thanks
All the
so
best.
much.
Take care. Bye.
Cheers, folks.
Bye.
Educate, entertain, enjoy.
You're listening
Face
to
in your
Aspen
face,
Waite Radio.
London. I just want to say a big thanks again to Jayney for coming on the pod today. Really interesting guest. Hold her in high esteem. Really interesting lady, human being, with a lot of great information and great viewpoints. And it's always interesting to bring in different people with different viewpoints on the show, and really bring in just a plethora of information, and then talk about all these things logically, and almost let anybody that's listening as well make up their own minds on things, as we're all making up our minds as well. And let's face it, I think we should all be on a never-ending sort of journey of trying to expand our horizons, and if, as I said to Jayney during the show, if enough information is presented to me that can convincingly maybe alter my view on something or change my opinion on something, then I am all for that. But obviously I need enough information to actually do that. I need to look at something and think, okay, pick this apart, almost scrutinize it. Okay, yeah, I can really see that there is was it undeniable logic to this. I can't see any sort of chinks in the armour, so to speak.
What I find mad is different perspectives can both have similar outcomes as well. So she had some amazing healing from the plant-based completely, but then when you were talking about Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson and that, and they've obviously had some amazing healings from
almost
their
very similar.
Almost
results.
It's just crazy, isn't it? That,
And obviously one thing that we were definitely agreeing on as well is that almost regardless of whether you want to go the carnivore diet route or the plant-based route, a lot of the benefits come from more of what you're eliminating, than what you're actually eating. So it's the elimination of all the processed foods, of just the chronically high levels of sugar. And as I said, back in the day, we evolved really to eat whole foods, and primarily that's what you should eat. I don't think that I'm not so strict that I don't think I think every now and again have a freaking birthday cake or have a bit of a dessert at Christmas time.
Strawberry milkshake from
When I went to that, I told you I went to that place Hickory's in Shrewsbury. That was an amazing meatery I had. I mean, I couldn't even tell you the last time I had a milkshake, which wasn't a protein shake. But there was it had chocolate milkshake on the menu, and I had it, and I didn't regret it, man, because it was like insane. You know what I mean? It's insane.
I think that's partly what life's about, isn't it? Like, of
Balance.
course you want to stay as healthy as you can, and you know, we're big advocates for trying to reach that endeavour. But at the same time, you want to be able to enjoy yourself. You want to have these moments of, like, we'll sit here sometimes and speak about food or drinks that we've had and been like, oh man, one time I had this amazing food. It does kind of stick with you, and it can become a memory. So it's definitely not like wasted to have that, you know, that
100%.
experience.
And I like, from everything that from that I've read and watched and stuff, all the most credible people that I sort of like follow, that, you know, have like PhDs and like, you know, sports scientists and nutritionists and everything, say that, you know, as long as you're sort of like eating what you should be eating about 80% of the time.
80-20 rule.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? That you know, like, that means, like, you know, if once a week you want to eat, insert whatever is your indulgence, whether it's like a chocolate bar, pizza, whatever, then I think you should. I mean, back in the day, Drew, I remember one of the strictest times I've ever been with my diet and my exercise was when we went through that stage when we were both bachelors, and you were living in Cannington still, and I moved back in with my parents, and I'd come to yours every Friday. We'd always pretty much get a curry. If it wasn't a curry, it would be like a Thai or something like that, and we'd have beers. But like,
the only problem was I was doing that through the week.
Yeah. But like, all the rest of the week, I was eating so clean. I was eating so clean. It was pretty much just nothing but like vegetables, berries, and like high quality protein sources. You know, and just like, and the only liquids I would have would be like water, milk, and coffee. That was it. Like, do you know what I mean? That was it. That's the only thing I was, apart from on that Friday when I'd have some beers. You know, but that was like a perfect example. Like, at the time, that was probably one of the times in my life where people were most sort of coming up to me and being a bit like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when you people are almost like, there's one thing obviously trying to be in shape when people actually treat you like you really are in shape. That was probably one of the times in my life. So obviously what I was doing was working, but still on that Friday night, I would like frickin', you know,
demolish a good
Sagaloo,
Balti and a Sagaloo,
you know, big Balti, Keemanan, frickin' Tarkadal. You know, like, I'd have so much. And I can remember even, like, you know, like people like Danny and some of like Sherelle and Danny's friends being like, I don't even understand how you're like eating so much, but you're still like in real good shape and that. And I'd just be like,
this is my 20% day.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, but that's like the whole rest of the week I'm just living off like frickin' like broccoli and like cod, or like, you know, or like broccoli and steak, or like asparagus and chicken, or do you know what I mean? And other than that, I'm just pretty much just eating like blueberries and raspberries, you know, and just like water. So
I feel like it's almost not always just about the food as well, isn't it? It's like you were saying then, when you would be doing something like that, it would be a social interaction too.
Yeah,
I feel like food is something that really brings people together. So
100%.
for that reason alone, it can be quite vital to
yeah. And I think as well,
day-to-day.
I think unless you're like one of those people that's say at the very top level of like athletics, you know, like Olympic level, world level athletics, or like, you know, or unless you're like a bodybuilder to the level where you're literally like a champion bodybuilder, I think that, you know, it's not important enough to your life to sacrifice a bit of social time every now and again. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, because sometimes to be like to embrace that like working out and like really good nutrition lifestyle, you know, you have to consistently work out and you have to consistently eat good. But at the end of the day, like, do you really want to do that to the point that, say, you're not going to go to a gig with a mate and just drink some beers, have an amazing night, and then at the end of the night on the way home get yourself like a frickin' burger or a pizza or something? Like do you know what I mean? There has to be balance in life. Like once a month, that's a really good thing to do. Do you know what I mean? You shouldn't deny yourself of that. You shouldn't like almost like drift away from your
like
friends.
You're saying about the health benefits of like if you're the analogy you made about the smoker and someone eating
the stress.
Yeah, the stress.
Yeah.
So almost like the one night out with your mates that are having a few beers and having that kebab on the way home and like listening to some good music, that's probably so good for your stress levels that it's cancelling out how bad the burger might be in that.
100%, man. And also I think as well, like I think the older you get, the more you think like, right, well, when I'm really old, when I look back on my life, what memories will I cherish? And although it's so insanely important to obviously try and be healthy for the benefit of not just yourself but your family, so you'll live long and you'll actually enjoy life as well. Do you know what I mean? You won't have to take loads of freaking drugs to keep yourself alive, to keep your heart ticking, and you know what I mean, you can actually be functional and actually go out in nature and hike and be, you know, lift stuff and garden and do all that good stuff. You know, pick up your grandkids. Not only do you want to do it for that, you know, as good as that all is, do you want to look back on your life when you're old and be like, I've got barely any like memories of like having like good social and like times with my mates. Do you know what I mean? Because I was just always like, oh no, I have to go to bed early and wake up and have my, you know, like insanely healthy breakfast. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, you know, you want to balance that, you know. Like some of my best memories are some of the most like debauchery filled like crazy nights I've had of my life. Well, like
those nights of hedonism.
Yeah, and on paper they're not necessarily healthy. Far from it. It's all like alcohol fueled, like freaking like crazy, like just crazy stuff going on. But it's just, in hindsight, they're just hilarious memories, aren't they? So I mean, so I think it's important to have them too,
and especially like the social thing. Like even if say like Josh, when we've seen him and he hasn't drank for like a whole year, but we still have like really fun nights out, have a few non-alcoholic beers and that. You're still getting that social interaction.
Oh yeah, like it doesn't
like,
have to be alcohol fueled.
Like it's you can still, but the actual socialization part of it is really important. And it's funny, you think you have to do it with alcohol all the time. So like in my head, it was like that. It wouldn't be as fun if you don't. But then like there are, you know, you can, and it's still really fun.
In my opinion, that's one of the good things, one of the nice things, almost of like being in your 30s, because I find that like I've really noticed the last few years of my life that a lot of my mates that have never really been that into like working out or diet have suddenly started to get into it, and I think it's because obviously there's only so many decades of your life you can go
without worrying about
eating rubbish and not exercising before, like, you know, as you do start getting like approaching 30 in those early 30s, you know, we all start getting a bit fatter and a bit more out of shape and start feeling like the aches and that and feeling less flexible, and you know, because you can get away with it when you're 18, 20, 25 even, do you know what I mean? You can just get away with it. You're still going to look great even if you have a real crap diet. You know, you're still going to feel good even if you don't exercise. But you know, like Josh is a prime example, and yourself as well, of like people that suddenly like, actually no, I don't want to drink, and actually, do you know what, like, you know, like Josh's like health kick last year where he was like running all the time, and I sent him like a little workout program, like a workout A and a workout B, and he was doing that like several times a week, running several times a week. Like that was so like awesome to watch that. Like, I mean, not physically obviously, but just like see his progress and see how into it and dedicated he was to it. And I never associated him or you with being that sort of person, like, say, 10 years ago. But I think that's a cool thing. But as a result of your mates being then into it, you, as you said, you can meet up with Josh and have a really good night, say, like, not drinking, because it's not that thing. Whereas if you want to say, go out with your mate but not drink, but then they are drinking, it feels a bit different. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's almost like you maybe feel like, not because they're making you feel like that, but you might feel like a bit excluded because you can see they're starting to get like...
Get on the tipsy train.
Yeah, getting a bit like that Dutch courage and getting a bit tipsy and a bit silly and that, but you're just still sober. So you're like, yeah, this is fun and that, but like, you know, I'm not really participating in it. I'm almost like just on the outside of it. So it's cool, like, you know, if your mates are like that as well. And then that's really good as well, because then it's almost like you're all encouraging each other. And I think... it's important to, as well, to remember that you don't need to do the intoxicants. Like, think like when you meet like all your good friends when you're in school and that, like none of us in secondary school were running around the halls, or at least not most of the time, intoxicated. May have been a couple times in year 10 and 11, but like, you know what I mean. But like you're just sober, but you're just silly freaking people.
Life, man.
Just having a great time with these like people that you've met, which are like fairly like-minded people that you just for whatever reason become friends with, and like. You just having like almost like every day is just hilarious.
Yeah,
you just never know what every day is going to. But like, it's important to remember, like when you did that, you were just like young, like just young sober people. You know,
it's funny. I had this like almost exact realization this last year with my friends,
right?
Because it would almost be that every time I would see them, we would be drinking. That was just the social activity. We would go to someone's house, drink.
Yeah,
you know, even if it was just us like hanging out. That was sort of the main goal, was like, right, we're going to be hanging out and laughing, but then we'll also be chugging drinks down. And on one of those weekends, I said, I really don't want to drink. Let's go do something that's non-drinking. And we went to, I think it was the Great Forest, and just got a barbecue, cooked up a nice barbecue, no drinks, you know, went on a nice walk.
Ramscombe.
Yes, yeah.
By over Stowey, yeah.
Yes, maybe not the Great Forest.
That sounds epic,
like
though, man.
It does, man. Maybe I was.
It probably is somewhere in the
sounds
UK
like I'm on a big journey.
So, yeah.
But man, probably one of the best days I had with them, like last year. You know, not drinking, just laughing, chatting, and you almost had more fun doing that and not having to rely on the intoxicants.
I feel like sometimes as well. I feel like, you know, it's so easy to almost like chase the dragon with intoxicants. So it's like, just because you had this insanely good night once back in like 2009 where you guys got fricking on it and like X, Y and Z hilarious events ended up unfolding, like just because you have that in your mind, you might think, oh yeah, I'm like almost like chasing something like that happening again. But it's like, I think like you're already going down a bad path if you're trying to like recreate something like that. Like things like that will happen like authentically and spontaneously every now and again, like almost like once in a blue moon. But you've got to let that happen. You've got to let that happen.
It can't always be like that. Like every
and you
time.
Can't try and force that. You can't be like, I'm going to have a party and it's going to be mental.
That's the same with psychedelics as well. That sounds like when I first was getting into psychedelics like years ago, like late teens, like early 20s, like I had like some incredible experiences, like mind-blowing experiences. And then I was chasing the dragon with it. Then that's when it went bad. It was like it would show like, you know, don't try and get that. That was a gift that you like received that experience. Like you can't just like put a pill in your mouth or do something like, and it will be like that every time. That's not the way life works. You know, it's like
it's almost like it's always when you are not expecting it that it will turn out like that, and it's never when you are expecting it that it will turn out like that. You know, like it's like the two almost like most raucous nights I had of 2024 were most likely my wedding night and also my friend Alice's birthday. But both days happened. Both of it happened very authentically.
Very naturally.
I didn't think, right, I'm going to get on it on my wedding day. I thought, oh yeah, I'm obviously going to drink and enjoy myself. And I didn't think that with Alice's birthday party either. If anything, I turned up and you know, there was a lot of Alice's family there, and it was like quite like a relatively smallish house, or at least it seemed small because there were so many people there, so many members of Alice's family and like extended friends and like neighbours from Cambridge, and I didn't hardly know any of them. So as a result, we were just almost a bit like bumping elbows with people, and almost a bit like, oh yeah, this might just be like we're here for a couple of hours thing, like pretty tame. And then the next thing, you know, this girl like Amy, who's like Alice's friend that I didn't really know, like I recognised her from a couple of like social things in the past, but she just freaking made me this insane concoction in this like massive gin glass, and it was like, you know, when someone's like just being a little sod, basically like being impish, and it's like 80% booze, 20% what do they even call it? You know,
mixer.
20% mixer. Whereas usually, obviously, it's like usually the other way around. Mate, it might have been more than that. It was probably like 90%. It had so much gin in it. I can't even speak. But it's like, do you know what I mean? It's like that almost like. Call it pride, call it like whatever. But I was like, I'm going to have this. I'm not going to be like one of those people that's like, oh no, I can't have that. Nah, it's too strong. I was like, nah, this is like my pride, man. This is like that. This is like you're in a barbarian. That's like accepting this challenge. All it had to was for me to have that, and it was like party on. You know what I mean? And because this girl Amy had made one for Alice as well, and a couple of other people that were there, it was like everyone was in the same mindset. And the next thing you know, we were like...
They drank the magic concoction.
We were like partying and dancing so much that I could tell it was making some people awkward and they were leaving.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But in hindsight, it was like hilarious. I mean, you could tell people were almost just like, where they hadn't done that, and we were just getting louder and louder and being more silly and weird and putting on like all these like alternative bands really loudly and that, and a lot of like Alice's extended family and like people that were there from just weren't
too much for me.
And they were probably looking at all of us and being like, these people are freaking nuts. Like, I almost just want to like leave this environment. I'm like, oh yeah, no, thanks for inviting me. Bye, Alice. Like, we're gonna now, like, what the hell?
Now let's start.
And then we were just like, woo! Yeah, just like night ends up with us all just like wrestling while giggling on the floor, sort of thing. You know what I mean? But it's like, it's great, isn't it? You know, but as I said, both times it's completely spontaneous. There's like, do you know what I mean? You can't force those things, can you? Do you know what I mean? You can't force those things.
Yeah, those spontaneous moments are awesome.
I always think it's a shame for the people that, like, I feel like everyone knows a few that will get so in their head locked into something that they don't feel like they can have those moments though. Like, I've definitely been like that in the past where I've been like, oh, sorry, I can't go to that thing, I've got work the next day, or like I've got this commitment that I've got to go to. And although that's all well and good, I feel like when you look back at these memories, you almost never think of the next day. As much as the next day usually sucks and you usually got a hangover.
The next day,
exactly. The memory is just that night. It's never how you're feeling the next day. I feel like that's almost a good way of putting it in perspective.
So what's your point, that it doesn't matter that you feel bad the next day, or is your point that
kind of, yeah, like not
matter?
To like, there's obviously got to be
you can't just do everything like that you want all the time if you have got commitments.
Yes, exactly. You've got commitments and responsibilities, but at the same time, you should have a responsibility to yourself every now and again to go out and enjoy yourself and make memories.
It's almost like it all just comes back to balance at the end of the day, isn't it? It all just comes like almost like pretty much everything in life just comes back to balance.
It's funny with like inhibitions as well. Like you know what you were saying about sometimes you can stop yourself from doing things. Like it just brought up this memory of like when I was in Peru and like do you remember, did I ever say about the weird like the Japanese girl that was like following me around everywhere?
You told me.
And, like, yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah, so she basically like I would go to a place and she would like follow me there, and, like, you know, and I was sitting next to her on the coach once and she started like rubbing my arm and stuff, and it was like really funny. Like weird. But so I went to this place called Pisac, and it was a beautiful little town, and I met a really cool girl there that was like she was
like Colombian or Brazilian.
Yeah,
or
Brazilian or I can't
South American.
I can't remember.
Venezuelan or something like that.
Yeah, and like but she was super cool, and like and we
obviously
were like
more
hanging
like
out.
Fiery, got that like
just
Spanish / Aztec DNA.
Yeah,
like,
just up for just like having like she was like
in the moment.
She was like, oh, we've heard that there's a waterfall near here. Should we go and try and find it?
Spontaneous.
Both just got in a tuk-tuk and like went and tried to find this waterfall and that. Really cool. So like then that like evening, like the Japanese girl turned up like to the hostel as well, and I was like and it was a bit weird, but like obviously it
love
friendly and that. And all this like this Colombian girl, she had like a boyfriend anyway, so it was definitely like really fun and stuff, but there was gonna be none like there you know unfortunately it wasn't anything like that, but like it was still like really fun to just share this like fun time with this girl and stuff. And so then the Japanese girl got there, and we'd planned out to go that night to just have a few drinks at the bars and just check it out, but just more like chilled, but just go and have a dance and stuff. And then I said to the Japanese girl, like, yeah, come along with us, like, you know, and but it's so funny with the culture of like, say what she was like, it was more like completely like not used to dancing or being out of her shell or anything, like where she's from Japan and stuff, really shy. And I remember, and it was like I remember talking to where was she from? Say Venezuela. The Venezuelan girl. About like we were all out and we were dancing, and like it was hilarious. She was like proper doing all these dance moves and everything. It was like really funny. We were just having a proper laugh, and the Japanese person was actually like like couldn't believe what we were doing and was just like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like finding it so like crazy, and we were like, this ain't crazy. Like she's like, you're not even drunk. We have one drink, and I'm like, we don't need to be drunk. Like, let's seriously come and do these moves with us. And I was like trying to like bring out the inhibition. Like, no. And it's funny how some people like they won't allow themselves, but you could tell like she did have a bit of a boogie in the end, and like see, like there's nothing. We're not going to take the mick out of you or anything. Like this is just like really fun. But
maybe it's like a slightly a cultural thing as well. Like, maybe like more in like.
But it made me think when you
Japan's.
said that about like, you know, allowing yourself to be like free in the moment and stuff like that's like that can be like really fun, but a lot of people don't give themselves like permission to like do that and stuff.
Or they're too self-conscious for whatever reason. And don't get me wrong, there's obviously like I empathise with that because that's not necessarily something that they want to be like. Sometimes it's almost like you're paralysed by it, but I think you just need to realise like what's the, like no one cares, man. Just like have a good time. You know?
I think it's almost a cruel irony that if anyone ever does anything cringy, because I feel like the reason you don't want to do these things is because you don't want to do something that's like a bit cringe or a bit like but the people that are never considered cringe are the people that just go and do something. If you give something 100% effort, no one really thinks it's cringe, but if you're stood there a bit like
that's
people
cringe
watching these, that's the cringe bit.
I think people deep down like admire almost like the confidence of somebody that will just do anything and not care, and they're like 100%. That's cool. They're like that's cool. That's almost like that's attractive, not even as like a opposite sex kind of way, but it's almost just like attractive as a human being. You know?
Like a social thing.
People want to be around people like that because they're like, oh, that guy is like, that's where all the action is. Because if you're all just sat down all the time, not doing anything fun because you're like worried about how you might be perceived doing anything, that's not a party, is it? That's not where the party's at.
Or even like when you paralyse yourself with like, you know, like that guitar thing that happened where it's like you can do something, but you allow like the fear or whatever, or the judgment of what they will think of you. Then it's the opposite. It's like you say, then it becomes cringe, and it's like, what even was that, you know? And it's like, but yeah, you got to go for it 100%.
But I think it's important to remember as well that we've all been there.
100%.
I don't mean, is there any guitarist that hasn't had like guitar spaz moment? Do you know what I mean? It's like where you've just like you know, even if it's like something that you've written that you could play a million times blindfolded perfectly, and then for some reason you're on the spot somewhere. There's people around in a live setting, and you just for some reason mess up, and you're like, what is going on? I've got this weird like paralysis. Like,
Where's the mind and finger coordination gone?
Sort of like weird hand block, like mind hand block all of a sudden. It's crazy, isn't it? You know, we've all been there. Yeah, I guess it's just like the hard thing is trying to not make it happen consistently, isn't it? That's like the hard thing.
Yeah,
almost just like fully blocking out any, because like I think it's like almost like the stress starts and then the stress grows in your mind, and then the more the stress grows, the more you mess up.
It's the pressure you're putting on yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the you know, just not allowing that stress in the first place, which is easier said than done. Almost like not even letting your mind allow it.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? But it's like it's
a mean feat.
It requires a lot of mental fortitude to be like that. And I don't know about you, Drew, but I almost like find it like it's quite tiring to be like that.
Oh yeah,
do you know what I mean? So it's
in.
like, you have to be so locked in and almost like to not let any of that stress or mistakes happen. It's quite mentally tiring to the point that afterwards you almost feel like you've just done like a big sort of like endurance test or something.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And also just on the thing of partying, like there's a fine line with that as well, because I think sometimes if some people have like too much inhibition but without any like respect or anything for the social situation, then it can be a bit annoying. Like, you know, you've always got that like annoying person that's like that's over the top with it. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, give it a break. Like, you know, like say like it's a crazy like drunk girl or something, and she's just like, I don't know. Do you know?
Or like trying to get you to get on it.
No, yeah, or just like being like annoying in a social situation where they're almost too like, it's all about me. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah.
That's sort of like attention seeking. Like
like that can be. They've obviously got no inhibitions about it. They're obviously being super confident and like no.
Maybe
inhibitions
they should care more.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like sometimes I think there is a bit of like, where is the balance? Balance. Exactly.
Yeah.
Background.
Yeah, I think we all know people a bit like that, don't we?
Yeah.
Or like people that maybe used to be part of your social circle and you're probably glad that they're not part of your circle now. Like, and you're like, that was just almost like a bit embarrassing. Like you'd be in a social situation like,
I'm a Leo, I'm a lion.
Like I am with that person technically in the friendship group, but please don't judge me on it.
It's funny that alcohol can make so many people like that. Like that shows why the almost ultimate goal should be to achieve that confidence and achieve that feeling of being high on life all the time without needing intoxicants. Like if everyone could go party and still feel so, you know, confident in themselves that you could just start whacking out dance moves, having a great time, you wouldn't need that.
Yeah.
I really like, I have said about it before, but like I haven't been to them for years now, but I went for a stage of going to these like small festivals that were like no alcohol there, and like Into the Wild, Butterfields, like some different ones, but like Into the Wild was like awesome. Always on different like either they do a summer one, like a winter, you know, all the different seasons and that. Always in a beautiful woodland, so you've got like fires and storytelling and music and family stuff and workshops and all this stuff going on in nature, but like there was no alcohol allowed there like at all. And I remember thinking like, how am I gonna like party here? How am I gonna have fun in that? But they're like some of the best like memories. I remember being there and just like loads of cool music all night, and then going deep into the woods and everyone sat around a fire and you're doing like storytelling and that, and it's like it seemed like really old school and really like that's super positive. And I'm like, I can't wait to go to them again, like now having a kid as well, and like not having to rely on everyone's getting wasted around you, but you can actually just party still.
It's exactly what I was saying about when you're back in school, isn't it, with your mates?
Yeah,
like,
it really did feel like that.
We were definitely more
like at Yoxter Camp or something.
we were definitely one of like the more like crazy little sort of groups in our year, probably like in the whole school, like relatively speaking. You know, the top 5% of just like silly, raucous, like little group of friends. But as I said, you know, we're just obviously, you know, when you're in school, maybe apart from the odd day in year 10 and 11 if you're a real rebel, but like, you know, you're just sober all the time. But you're just like,
you're definitely finding ways to have some fun.
I know for a fact. I can barely remember, like, you know, I can't remember obviously every day of school, but I know for a fact that probably pretty much every single day in Haygrove was a freaking hilarious day for one reason or another. Regardless, I mean, yeah, some bad things would have obviously happened some days as well, but I know there would have been at least a couple of things that happened every day that would have made me almost like wet myself laughing. So I mean, for whatever reason, whether it was like laughing at a mate for some silly reason or just whatever happens, you know what I mean? And it's just like, that's the good stuff in life, man. You know,
wholesome.
100%.
Yeah.
I do reckon that when I'm past like 25, I'll be like teetotal.
Yeah,
I reckon so. I don't enjoy drinking very much.
It's so good hearing such a young man say that. Like,
I think he's quite well adjusted, isn't he? Obviously, Bullwinkle, for such a young fellow.
Do you think it's like? Do you think there's more people your age that are coming to that conclusion as well? Is it becoming more? Because like when we were that age, it was like totally opposite. At that time, you know.
It's hard to say. I reckon so because
I've heard it with like phones and that as well. Like people are cottoning on to the fact that these like things are like there's some negative habits forming out of like technology and drinking and you know all that kind of stuff.
I suppose because we were so much like with the technology, for example, because we're born so much into it, you almost with people that were outsiders looking in. You would have almost had to see the Matrix and choose yourself to go down that route. Yeah. Whereas when you're almost, this is going to sound hilarious, but when you're almost born into it, you kind of have to like isolate your mind to be like, is this really what I want to do? And then take yourself out of it. But it makes sense that a lot of people are, you know, if you see someone else do that and they're having a better time, it's naturally going to sort of domino effect and people will do the same. And with the drinking, like, I've spoken to you and Josh before about like what it was sort of like when you were going out in town and stuff like that, and it's nowhere near like that anymore. Like we went out on New Year's, I don't think I saw one person that I knew.
Really?
Like it was all just, you know, me and my friend went out and there wasn't really anyone from my year that was out. Everyone was just kind of at home with their families, like maybe watching the fireworks, chilling out, eating some food.
I found that interesting.
To be fair, it blew my mind a little bit, but then at the same time, like me and my best mate, we don't enjoy drinking, and we'll say this all the time. Like
I remember you said you don't like actually enjoy the taste of really any alcohol, do you?
I don't mind it,
right?
But it's like I could happily go without it,
right?
You know,
right.
But I don't know. For me, the feeling is like the next day, like or the week after, where you know your chemicals are all going crazy.
Not worth it to you.
You don't feel great, and I get like pretty bad anxiety as well.
Anxiety? So you feel anxious when you're hanging?
I think a lot of people get now.
I remember you told me that you feel really emotional when you're hanging.
I'm a cancer though, so I'm swimming in those waters of emotion all the time.
Swimming in those tears.
But yeah, when I'm hungover, I don't necessarily feel depressed. I feel real annoyed the fact that I'm so hanging. But real emotional. So if I like watch a film or something that's like gets the old tear strings going, I'll be sitting there with Meg and or I'll just start feeling emotional like for no reason, like literally like I want to cry in that, and I think it is because I'm just so hanging. Body's reaction to it.
I think it's all the chemicals in your brain. You like offset them so much that you just don't know what's going on or what to feel. Like I know personally,
it's definitely not natural, is it? It's like
how
regulated
chemical imbalance, isn't it?
Yeah,
chemical imbalance. You've thrown off your regular balance by putting in all this intoxicant into your body, which is thrown off the balance. It's caused a chemical imbalance.
And that's like this diet and then no alcohol, like it's a mixture of both, obviously, but like how like level I feel compared to just like how I was feeling like this before, you know, it is like, I think that's it, like no massive spikes in your blood sugar or anything, because I'm not having like sugars and stuff, so it's just like I just feel just quite like level. And it is like that thing of like what you felt like when you were younger, because we weren't drinking alcohol in school. Like I didn't really start drinking until I was like 17, 18 really, like
you'd have a couple around my house
few just every now and again, but it was always the exception, not the rule, like, you know? And like and I did feel pretty, you know, I think I can't remember what that was like, because there's not been many times in my life since then that I've not like drank like pretty like not all the time, but like consistently, you know. And it's like clearing that fog.
100%, man.
I find it crazy that I can like if I was drinking with my friends, and let's say we even had like 3 or 4, you know, pints, and we were just laughing, joking, nothing like off happens, it was just a good night where you spent with your friends laughing. The next day I would almost wake up feeling like guilty or like anxious about what had happened.
I know what you mean about that, almost like guilt. I think it depends on the situation. I think it depends on the scenario and situation. I definitely know what you mean, though. I think that, like, if just for some reason by default you think, oh, I'm hanging out with my mates tonight, therefore I guess we should just drink while we're doing it, I think that ends up, you almost have a guilty feeling like, why am I drinking again? Like, why I shouldn't just by default just go and buy some booze and start drinking just because I'm hanging out with my mates. Do you know what I mean? I think that's almost like a bit weird if you think about it.
Yeah,
you know?
And I almost feel like a bit like anxious about almost where I stand with people after that. Like until I would see people the next day, or like see, chat to people.
Because of like what you would have done or something. Or?
Yeah, I guess. But even if it was like a night that I could sort of remember, my main problem I think is that I can't remember anything if I drink.
Really?
Like after like 5 pints, it's just gone.
Oh,
it's just
that
like,
happens with me as well.
Yeah,
it's freaking scary.
See, that
I can even be like
so weird.
I can even be like present in the moment, apparently, according to my friends. And the next day, it's just like I can't even remember being there or drinking or anything. And then when you see photos of yourself, and I always find that a bit creepy when you see photos of yourself and you look vacant.
Like this.
Yeah, and or like you can see in your eyes, but there's not really any emotion behind them.
Running, there's no one behind the wheel.
Just full on ghost mode.
The demons taking over. That's why they call them spirits, isn't it? Literally, it's like they say. They say that your as part of your soul leaves your body, and something else inhabits your body, like on the alcohol. And I'm like, I can imagine that. I can imagine that. That could be true.
But I find
it's certainly how it sort of feels, isn't it?
I find it crazy that you can have that anxiety, like even after a couple drinks of like stuff that if I hadn't drank, I wouldn't feel any anxiety. Like if I just hung out with my friends and spoke to them, and the next day I would just be like, oh, that was fun. But if there was like maybe 3 pints involved, the next day I'd be like, oh god, I gotta speak to my friends. I gotta make sure everything's alright.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I almost feel like the struggle as almost like trying to be like a well-adjusted adult is to not have a life of extreme highs and lows. And I think that like while we all naturally will have highs and lows in our life,
let them come naturally.
you actually don't want that to happen.
No.
What you want, if this is your high and this is your low, what you want to be is somewhere in the middle. Yeah. Right? Because what happens is if you chase a high, we were talking earlier about chasing the dragon. So let's say like trying to take intoxicants to have an amazing time. Even people that just like live for the weekend so they can go to the pub or even go to the pub every day after work, which is super unhealthy.
You're going to get like, a crash after.
Yeah, because I think for every single high, again, balance, every single extreme high, I feel like you're going to have the equivalent low. And I don't want to be living this life in this weird manic state of like 1 minute I'm euphoric and the next minute I'm so depressed I'm like questioning everything in life. Screw that. What you should, I think, strive for is the feeling when you like sit down with like sit down in the evening with someone you really like, whether it's like your partner or like a mate or whatever, and you've got like your favourite hot bevy in your hand. I mean, whether it's like a nice cup of tea,
wholesome,
or something. That just a feeling of contentness
that comes from like groundedness and like a levelness in your life. Building things like, and that's why I think it is like important with your diet and exercise and stuff, because it's almost like they're like the foundations that you're building your experiences from. And like
they're the pillars.
And like if they're quite solid, then you're just gonna feel leveled. Like you might have a little sway this way or that way, but you're gonna hit against your foundations, and it's gonna hold you up a bit rather than just like
I genuinely do really think that. I think I completely agree, man. Like one of the reasons why exercise is really beneficial, whether it's going to the gym or say just going for like a fat walk in nature, it almost like returns you to your default factory settings. Like you're never going to say, oh my god, man, I mean, you might if it's somewhere like insanely beautiful in the world you've never been to before, but if it's just like some hike in your local area, you're never going to go, oh, I'll tell you what, man, that hike I had the other day was freaking mental, like, oh, this happened and it was like the best day of my life. But also, you're not. You know that by the end of that walk, right? You got your healthy hormones flowing, those endorphins. The rest of it, you're taking in all this fresh air. You're looking around you. It's a beautiful place, and you're just going to feel pretty good by the time you get back in your car. And it's the same after a good workout. I'm not leaving the gym like freaking as elated as some of the craziest parties I've ever had with my mates in my life, or some of the most mental situations. But I'm just feeling pretty good, and I think that's the thing. You should just try to be feeling like pretty good, rather than like insanely happy, because then you might get freaking real sad as well. Do you know what I mean? Or like whatever. Yeah, like screw that.
Oh, we just started watching Daisy Jones and the Six, and I knew Meg would love it, but she's absolutely loving it, and it's like it's real. It's nice watching it together. Yeah, but it's a bit like that. Like you look at like Daisy and the way she's living her life.
They're addicts.
She's quite full on, and it's so it seems like so much fun. Yeah, but also so just like
Billy was an addict, but then he becomes like teetotal sort of thing. But then meets Daisy, and Daisy had like a bit of a rough childhood, so she's her release is like music, but also everything that comes around with being a rock and roll. So it's like the sex and drugs and rock and roll lifestyle, but it's not healthy.
And that's it. It is. It looks so fun, but then it's not sustainable. That kind of stuff isn't sustainable. What is going to sustainably make you feel good for a long time, a longer time as possible? And it's like coming to that, like, you know.
Oh, 100%, man. 100%. Yeah. Shout out Daisy Jones and the Six.
Should we quickly speak about what we watched recently?
What about Nosferatu?
Just to change topic completely.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a worthy thing to talk on.
Just for sort of 5 minutes, because I say we don't want to go over. But yeah, man. I mean, yeah.
Spoiler alert, by the way. Spoiler alert for anyone that does want to see Nosferatu and hasn't seen it yet. Yeah.
Spoiler alert, everyone. So if you're planning to see Nosferatu in the cinema,
we'll see you next week.
This is the end of the show.
Check out now. We're only going to be having about another 5 minutes of the show anyway, but. I went to the cinema to watch Nosferatu with. Is
it a new one or is it?
Yes, yes, remake. But with my mate Tyler on Sunday, and Bullwinkle went with his mate. Rob on Monday. For a second, I thought you couldn't remember the name of your mate. I was going to be like, come on, man, he's your mate. On Monday evening you went to see it. But oh man, so freaking good. Man.
Is it?
So crazy, good. Man. Great film.
Oh man, like one of the best movies I've seen in the cinema in ages. What? And especially if you want to talk.
Is it still on now?
Yeah,
I might go watch it tonight.
Dude, you
Josh
really should.
Josh really wants to go, so you should send him a text and see if he wants to go.
Oh yeah, because you're meeting the guys.
Yeah, tomorrow for a band.
Oh, you're meeting the guys tomorrow
evening.
Yeah, maybe you should go tonight. I really recommend it, man. It would be a good.
Go see my nan and then go to.
It would be a nice chill thing to do. Like I did it on like a Sunday night, and it's almost like a weird. In a way, it was like because Tyler works Saturday nights, I think. And he was working Sunday in the day, so that's the only day we could go. And at first I was a bit like,
is it going to give me nightmares though?
It's pretty dark.
Mate, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie, Drew. It's it's on the upper end of horror.
Oh, nice.
Super dark, super trippy, super disturbing.
Cannot believe it's a 15.
Oh, mate, it's shocking that it's a 15.
It's crazy. I don't know how they got away with that.
At the end of the movie, that's the first thing I said to Tyler. I was like, mate, how was that a 15? And he went, that wasn't a 15. And I was like, mate, you know it comes up before the movie? I noticed, and Tyler must have not registered it. But I was like, mate, it said at the beginning of the movie, it came up like 15.
Whoa.
And Tyler was like, no, it didn't. And I was like, mate, it did.
I reckon they were one more drop away of blood from like going over the limit. They must have, but it felt like they went over the limit for a 15 anyway.
Definitely
way past.
I don't like. See, I just think that's a flat out just bad classification. I mean, I'm not for like censorship or anything. I mean, yeah, if you want to scare the kids, scare the kids. I mean, 15-year-old's not really a kid anymore, but you know what I'm saying. But it's just I don't understand really how it's not an 18. It's got like, as I said, spoiler alert, but it's got I won't say too much now because if you want to go watch it, but it's got like child violence, grooming, sort of rape,
gore.
Gore. Psychological terror and horror, like just pure psychological terror and horror. Gore, like graphic gore.
It's interesting, like putting a 15 through with all of that, like what
you think, like what classes as an 18 then? You've got the child, the bad stuff with the kids. You've got like literally almost like child grooming, pretty much rape. Grotesque murder and death, psychological torment and horror. Like what? Like what?
But just to get across, it's not the sort of film that like relies on those things.
Oh no!
Like out of all the horror movies that I've watched, and this is certainly one of the few outliers to this. Yeah. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's amazing.
The cinematography is amazing.
One of the first
ever horror movies.
So that I'm glad that it's really good because I know
often remakes are suck.
I've heard and I've heard that it's a very renowned movie. You know?
Very well. It's very well respected, obviously, because it's part of cinema history. Back when Nosferatu was made, they still didn't have the ability to record audio with movies, so it was a silent film. So they had like classical music to the picture, but there was no sound. There was no sound, like other than the music. They couldn't record.
It was nearly lost completely in time as well. I was telling you that fact the other day.
What's that?
All of the copies of Nosferatu nearly got destroyed because they didn't get the licensing from Bram Stoker's estate for Dracula.
Yeah.
But there was just one copy that didn't get destroyed. It was like, I don't know where, in a warehouse or something. It just didn't get found.
Man, you've just...
and that is...
you just sort of like cut out then for a second.
Oh, no.
It's all right, just say that last like 10 seconds again.
Well, it didn't for me, so...
I think it may be of your headset. But,
okay.
But yeah, there was one final copy that didn't get destroyed, left in a warehouse somewhere, and that is the copy that everyone knows Nosferatu Nosferatu from today.
Man, it's so lucky that was like found and that they didn't destroy that one, because it's like, as I said, it's part of cinema history and it's a legendary movie, absolutely legendary movie. But honestly, Drew, I can't say enough good things about the movie. I do recommend that you go and watch it tonight. I recommend anyone who goes and watches it. It's almost like a masterclass in cinematography. That's how I describe it.
What did we sort of say after? We said great acting, script, story, cinematography, framing, soundtrack. It had everything.
It's definitely. I think
8 p.m.
there'll be an 8 p.m. screen tonight, so it's perfect time.
I'm excited.
But obviously, and don't get me wrong, we've obviously only lightly dabbled, but we've obviously lightly dabbled with making videos, right? Yeah. It is so well done, Drew, that I don't understand how they made it that good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love that. It's like a 10 out of 10 of just when you get like a 10 out of 10 of like directing, videography, set design, music score, acting,
color grading.
Yeah. It's like every minute thing is like a 8, 9, or 10 out of 10, right? Yeah. And when you get that almost across the board, it's almost like a simple scene, like a fairly dark shot in a house, which you're like, this is just a shot of a room. There's not even anyone stood there right now. But the atmosphere and the way it's making you feel in that moment is somehow amazing. And I just don't really get it. I sort of get it, but I don't understand how I would achieve that. Do you know what I mean?
With just a lens and some.
It's insane.
It's incredible.
It's so enjoyable. It's just, I think it's something like 2 hours and 10 minutes. So it's quite a long movie, but even so, it's like, it's just a ride. Like there's never a lull in the action. There was never a minute of the movie, even like a second, where I thought this is dragging a little bit. I'm a bit bored now. The movie starts with a bang, and then there's varied sets and places and things that are going on throughout the movie in this really intriguing, amazing way that takes you on this little roller coaster all right up to the very final scene. And I can't say enough good things about the movie.
I loved really what you were saying before, and it makes sense why it was so good. I mean, Robert Eggers is the director, and he's a great director anyway. He's done films like The Northman, Lighthouse, various others that are all really good and dark and creepy. Cool. Really good film. And you were saying, weren't you, that this is something that he's almost been working on since he was a child?
Yeah, so he's been fascinated by Nosferatu since he was a kid. And apparently even when he was like in school, he was like in charge of like a play that year or something like that, and then he made like the school do Nosferatu, which is pretty cool. And he had to like make the set and everything, and he like stayed pretty loyal to the story, as is the new movie that he's done, but he like tweaked certain points, and he said actually some of the things that ended up in this movie were things that he tweaked all the way back then when he did this like thing back in the day. So it's almost, you can tell he's almost like he's very emotionally invested in this story, and you can sort of tell, because you can tell he's poured his heart and soul into it.
So much more substance to it when it's like that.
Mate, it's amazing. But as it's one of those movies though. It's like it's because it's so good. Don't get me wrong, but you leave the movie, you're almost like whoa, like that is like what, like almost like it's intense. You know what I mean? You're like whoa. Like I was thinking about it almost like pretty much non-stop for like 24 hours afterwards. I woke up in the morning, the first thing I thought about was the movie, and I started like reading reviews on my phone in bed and stuff like that, like reading different things now I knew about it, if you know what I mean. Like, but yeah, amazing. So yeah, shout out Nosferatu. Anybody that hasn't watched Nosferatu that wants to go see an amazing masterclass in horror cinema, go watch Nosferatu. Amazing. Great actors. Yes.
You'll not be late for the cinema proprietor.
Yeah, Count Orlok will not be happy. So yeah, we'll leave it there, folks. Thanks again to Jayney Goddard for coming on pod today. She's coming back next week apparently, so that'd be cool. We'll dive back into where we left off basically. And yeah, cheers to everyone for listening to another Pandora's Box. We love you. We'll see you next time.
Ta-ta for now.
All right.